This episode is sponsored by Special K Glass. The first thing they always like to mention is they use recycled glass to make bongs. Also, they have a very dynamic website that showcases 80 new pieces they make each week before they put them up on auction. The website is in the description, but also is specialkglass.net. One of the great things they're doing is they also give away a bong every day, like every single day. They're going to give away a bong every day for the rest of their life as a company, and they run all the giveaways and auctions on their Instagram. So look up Special K Glass on Instagram, and then go to specialkglass.net and see what they're working with while you're listening to this episode. Yes, sir.
Hey, man, this is Tommy Chong, and right now you're listening to The Anthony Rogers Show.
You are now listening to the best show in the universe, The Anthony Rogers Show. You probably wish that this was your show. But it's not. It's the Anthony Rogers Show. Tell all of your friends to listen to this show.
Welcome back to the greatest show in the entire universe. Today we have a complete legend in comedy, Tommy Chong. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
No problem,
Yeah,
man.
I'm doing great.
I feel like you're too big for this show. Like you should have said no to this show. I feel like.
that is funny. I'm finding out I'm not too big for anything.
That's funny,
No,
brother.
I'm a little guy now.
Well, the secret is we all are. That's the secret, I think. Like nobody, like there's egos just lies to us, right? But I want to start off strong. Like you were cellmates with Jordan Belfort, the Real Wolf of Wall Street.
I sure was. Yeah, I helped him write his book.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I didn't know the book for it.
I helped him in a funny way. Like he's a genius. When I met him, I recognized that right away. He used to walk around and play backgammon and have a conversation and beat who he was playing backgammon with. We shared a cubicle, not a cell. It was a little cubicle that held 3 people. But we were kind of, because we're famous, they just had 2 of us in there. And I would write. I was writing my memoirs every day. You know, I'm writing a book called Memories. No, what is it? Something. Meditations from the Joint. And Jordan would come in from playing tennis, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I'm writing a book. Then he goes, "Oh, I'm going to write a book." And so he wrote a couple of pages or 1 page, and he handed it to me like I was a teacher, you know. Hey, what do you think of that? And I read it, and it was like the first page of Thomas Wolfe's Bonfires of the Vanities, which is probably Jordan's favorite book. And so Jordan says, "So what do you think? What do you think?" And I says, you haven't written shit, man. You know, that's Bonfires of the Vanities, you know. Pretty good copy, though. And he got a little pissed off, you know, and so what should I write? And so I told him, I said, write those stories you've been telling me every night. You know, every night we'd go to sleep and Jordan would, entertain me with stories of his life. And they were phenomenal, you know, what he did and how he did it. Anyway, he took my advice. And he never really talked to me after I told him that he had written shit. But he wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And then I got out of prison before he did. And then when he got out, he showed up at my house one time because we're both from the same prison. We're not supposed to have any contact, you know, and we're both on probation. And so Jordan stayed in his car and he yells up to me, you know, I was on the balcony. He goes, "I wrote a book." And I said, "Great." Or I finished my book. I wrote it, you know, and I said, "Great." He says, "It's going to be a movie." I said, "Wow." He says, "Martin Scorsese's going to direct it." And yeah, it's called The Wolf of Wall Street. And so he got me a copy, which I never read, you know, because I got bad eyesight. And so I'm not really a big book reader. But anyway, that's what happened, and that book became a bestseller, and the movie became a big hit. So I helped him by telling him that he didn't write shit. That's how I helped him.
So his success is basically because of you.
I think so. No one else agrees, but I think a lot of it. No, actually, what I did, I put him on the right track. You know, I usually don't insult people, but when you're a genius, you know, that's motivation. You know, because those guys don't get told too many times. You know, the truth, and because usually, you know, they're ahead of the game. You know, and well, look at him. He's ahead of the game. I wrote my book and it came out. I didn't make any money. Jordan's come out and he made a fortune and made a movie out of it. So who yeah, who didn't write shit here?
That's hilarious. That's funny, man. Like, and I had him on the show. I had him on when I was on the radio in Texas radio. I had him on a show like, a couple years ago. I didn't know you guys were cellmates till after, and I regretted not asking him that question almost because like just to get his perspective of like, I mean, that's got to be kind of crazy. Like, and he actually was the intro for my show for the first couple seasons. Was like this is Jordan Belfort, the Real Wolf of Wall Street, blah blah. The dude's like, dude seemed pretty with it, man. I don't know him as well. I mean, you got to know him way better probably. I talked to him for like an hour or something, but it was just crazy. Like seeing that, like, I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio played him in a fucking movie. That's like insane. Like, you probably didn't expect that from like meeting him there to like seeing that, you know, it's insane. That's huge.
Well, Belfort was about 3 times more than what Leonardo DiCaprio showed, if you can believe that.
I almost bet that for this, like for to package it into Hollywood, you almost have to be less crazy almost like.
Oh yeah. I mean, Jordan, I mean, that movie never touched on just a portion of his life. No, he is really a unique character. And you know what kills me is that had he put that energy into legit business, he would be Basil. You know, he could.
Wow,
he had that ability. The what I saw with Jordan, because he's not that tall, and I think that affected him all his life. Because he had huge ambition, and especially with the ladies, it all boils down to the ladies when he was younger, but his dad, you know, a Jewish accountant, basically. Jordan was such a genius that his first move was to go to medical school. He was going to become a doctor, you know, because that's how smart he was. And he was very young, but when he was in medical school, the professor gave a little talk to everybody, and he told everybody in there, he says, listen, if you're in here to make a lot of money, get up and leave now. And Jordan got up and left. That's where Jordan's at.
That's funny. My fiance wanted me to tell you a funny story too. It's like her dad had your Cheech and Chong album, with the one with the rolling paper, and like he actually had the rolling paper in it. It's still, and I thought that was kind of weird.
That's very unique, very rare.
Yeah,
especially with our fans. Usually there's a little corner ripped out of the top of the paper.
That's funny. And like we had.
They didn't want to ruin the art. They didn't want to ruin the art, but they wanted to roll a joint.
That's actually smart. That's actually pretty smart. We found out like this, like we had an Airbnb guest a couple years ago, and they saw the album. They're looking through it, and they're like, "Wait a second, my dad's doesn't have the rolling paper." So that's how they like. That's how I like realized people were like smoking. Because I didn't know. I was like, I'm like kind of young. I didn't realize. I found you guys in Reflection from like your movies and stuff. You know, to where like I didn't have the opportunity to buy the albums in its prime and stuff. But I just thought that was a funny story, like seeing it like two different like one person's dad had the rolling paper, one person's dad like you saw on their face they realized that it came with the rolling paper. Like you said, they're like wait, what? It came with the rolling paper, and they're like my parents didn't have that. Like you saw it go over their face. It was hilarious, man.
Well, people ask me, do you still have your rolling paper in your album? I don't have an album. My kid. Paris, my son, who is now my manager, he when he was about 7 years old, we moved to Vancouver, Canada, and when the first thing we told him is, don't tell any kid, you know, who your dad is, as Chong, And so next morning I wake up and he's selling all my albums, my whole record collection for $1 a piece to the kids. And we told him, man, we told you not to tell him that your dad's Chong. And he said, I didn't. I told him that you were Cheech.
That's hilarious. Smart kid, man. Smart kid.
Oh, he is. But, and now he's in his 40s. So I can imagine, how old are you? Are you in your 40s?
34, almost there. Getting there.
34. Yeah. So I can see why, because my kid, he would listen to the albums, but he never got the jokes until he got older. And then as he got older, then I watched the transformation, they would get the little poop jokes that we would do. And then as he got older, he listened. Finally he reached that age where, I got it, Dad. I understand now. Yeah.
That's funny. Did you know like that you would be this like legend, like making these movies and stuff, or did you know this would last the test of time so far? At least, I mean, I think it has.
Oh yeah, no, I had no idea. But I'll tell you what I did know. That when we started doing records, and that I had already been through a couple of careers, a couple of bands, a couple of experiences with Motown, and I really, when I quit Motown, or they fired me, and I wouldn't go back when they asked me to. I told Berry Gordy, I want to become a Berry Gordy. I don't want to work for one. And he said, I respect that. And he gave me a nice little stepping, money to pursue my dream. And part of the dream was, getting turned on to improvisational acting, and then creating a improvisational strip club in Vancouver, and then meeting Cheech. And then everything in my life has been ordained, I just had to follow the impulses that I got, and I did, and here we are.
That's awesome. That's interesting. So you started in music first, you said?
Yeah, I was a guitar player, blues guitar player, and a club owner. And,
okay.
But I've always been blessed. My whole life has been blessed right from the birth, and so. I said the other podcast I did this morning. I said that I was blessed with hard lessons. I was blessed with a lot of hard encounters to get over. Obstacles. And right from early childhood. I like I told him, I never really. I wasn't with my mother. That I can remember. She got TB and she got quarantined right away, and when I was a baby, and then they found where I was a toddler, not a toddler. I was about three, I guess, and then they found a spot on my lung, and I had to go in the hospital, by myself, because my dad, he just came back from the service, and when you're in the hospital, you're by yourself. Your parents will come and visit you, but you're there. And so I spent a lot of my early a year in the hospital, and then I came out of the hospital, went directly into like an orphanage, a home for Salvation Army home, and my brother was already there, and my sister was already there, and then I was taken from the hospital right to the home, and that's where I lived for about a year, and then my dad got it together and got a little like a what do you call it, a shack. Basically it was a bungalow, but it had no indoor plumbing, had no electricity, and it was an outhouse and pump down the road, the neighbor's pump for the water. And so I've had a really interesting early life, and the only entertainment that I had in my life at the time, this is in the 40s now, was church, Sunday school. and so I really took to the early teachings, the Sunday school teachings, which for the most part is all the teaching you really need if you're going religion, because that's the basics of any Sunday school is usually everything that you need to know about religion. And I was very lucky, and also ordained. My whole life was sort of things happened, and I was chosen. I really felt that now that I look back, at the time you don't know, but looking back, because the hospital stay kept me from developing my legs to the point where I could play sports where I could get hurt. That feeling. And so I never developed. And what I developed in the hospital, in the home, and that was this observation of people, looking at people, and then seeing, how because when you're small in the hospital or in the home, you're an observer. People don't even see you; they look over you. You know what I'm saying? And so I had that early being ignored, and it made me better, because then I had to learn everything on my own, and I became very self-reliant in so many ways. Like there was no toy store growing up. If you wanted a toy, you made it. Or Christmas would come and your parents would buy, we weren't wealthy at all. So we'd buy one, each get one nice toy, and then we get a stocking full of oranges and fruit and nuts and cheap stuff, homemade cookies. One of my first Christmas with the family was so beautiful, because we had nothing on the wall. In fact, because I've got an artistic streak in me. I took the centerfold out of the Star Weekly magazine, and it was a landscape, and I scotch taped it on the wall so we could have something, some picture on the wall. And the first Christmas was my mother out of the hospital was legendary, because my mother, she had a tough childhood too. We found out she's 20% Native, and so and her mother committed suicide when she was 3, and so she ended up. She only she was in grade 3, and so when her mother died, then she was put in a foster home. She became a domestic, and I found out that she's Native. She's 25% or 20% Native, which meant her mother was half Native, and born on a reservation in Manitoba. And so when her mother died, the kids were sent to various places, and my mother was raised by this English family where she learned all the English cooking and housekeeping and all that stuff. She was a domestic until she met my dad. I never knew this until she died. And my dad was really in mourning. He's half Chinese. He was like 5'3", but really good athlete, and a distance truck driver. He was a tough little guy. But when my mother died, I was in Europe doing a movie, and then I flew back. And when I got home, to the home in Qualicum Beach, Canada, everybody was having a party, And so my dad was sitting there really, really sad. So I took him for a ride. I said, "Come on, let's go for a ride." And so while he was riding, when he was riding, he told me. I started asking him. I said, "How did you mom meet?" And so he told me, and that was so. It was such a, we never knew anything about him. Isn't it funny? They knew everything about us, but we didn't know anything about how they met or anything like that. And so then I found out, that they met in the 20s, I guess. Because I was born in 38, so they met. Yeah, into the 20s, uh, and, and you know how they met? Like I said, my mother was a domestic. My father was Chinese, and he worked he had various jobs, and anyway, what they would do back in the day, they had parks, and every Sunday they would stroll in the park, and all the domestic. My mother hung out with mostly Ukrainian ladies that were domestics, and they hung together. And my dad was with the Chinese guys and the other that gang, and they would the guys or the girl. No, I guess the guys. Anyway, they ended up hooking up. You know, my mom and dad met each other and they fell in love. And he's 5'3", she was 5'8", and they made a beautiful couple. And then they had my brother first, and then they had me, and I was named after my uncle. And my mother, when she married my dad, she really went Chinese. Although my dad really wasn't a typical Chinese, he was typical Canadian. You know, well, first of all, he liked white women. You know, and yeah, it was a beautiful trip. We drove around, and it was the first time we ever talked about that. My dad never used to talk. He was one of those. He was a truck driver. And when he'd leave to go to work, he'd never say goodbye. He'd just leave. And then when he come back, he would never say, "Hey, I'm home." He would just here. and then he used to tell he'd beg my older brother to come with him on the road, you know, because sometimes just for company. And my older brother never wanted to go because he was heavy into sports and hanging out with his friends. And I'd stand there and go, I'll go. And he'd look around, oh, okay, come on. And so that's where I got my love of traveling, because I spent quite a few years sitting in the truck and driving, hundreds of miles. And then and I was really good company. I'd get in the truck, fall asleep immediately, wake up when it was time to eat, and then go back to sleep. But I was blessed. Like you said, did I think I was going to be famous? I knew I was. I don't know. You know, my mother she told me in the beginning, you know, because she said, you're different and people are going to notice you. So it's up to you how you conduct yourself, you know, what impression.
Gave me chills. That kind of gave me chills hearing that. Like the last part, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like what your mom was telling you kind of gave me, I got chills when you said that. That's interesting. Like,
yeah, no, she knew. And what the secret is that my mother was quarter native, and they kept that hidden. They kept that hidden all our whole life, all the family. And she was from a big family. There was like 7, 8 kids in her house. And you know, the funny thing, even though my mom marries a Chinese guy, that's our house was where her dad came and stayed with us. Her sister came and stayed with the rejects, you know, of the family. The other brothers, they're somewhere back east. We stayed with them when I was a baby, but I don't remember any of it. But I remember, and I got to tell you this story about my Aunt Irene. She was classic. Remember that movie Auntie Mame?
yeah,
You know, where the aunt. Well, this was Aunt Irene. She was drunk out of her mind, and literally fall out of the taxi cab. And then she'd say, "Come on, give your auntie a kiss." She was the black sheep of the family. She was the one that had the baby out of wedlock, and then the baby died, and they had all the pictures. It was all a big, you know, back in the day, you know, there was all sorts of scandal stuff, you know, especially if you married a Chinese guy or you know, and you hid the fact that you're native. But my drunk aunt, she meets this other drunk in a bar.
This episode is sponsored by ResRid. Go to resrid.com or amazon.com and search ResRid and get a a free rejuvenator pouch free. ResRid is a cannabis residue remover, and they make your pipes and bongs smell better also. They work on glass, ceramic, metal, silicone. Just go to the website or Amazon and check it out now while you're listening to this episode.
And they get married. Well, he dies, and then they find out he was a war hero. He had won the Victoria Cross, the biggest medal you could win.
That's huge.
So she got this gigantic pension for the rest of her life, and it was just her. And so she when she came to live with us, now my dad, he's Chinese. He said, "Okay, Auntie Irene, no matter how drunk she was allowed to live with us because she bankrolled everything for us. She helped me with my music career. When I needed a guitar amp, and she put my sister through all her dance classes and all her, anything that costs money. Because when you're poor, man, you can't afford shit that everybody takes for granted. When you don't have an income coming in, and that's what it was with us in the beginning. But my aunt, she took care of that, and she lived with us right up until she died. And I was her favorite nephew because that's the way I am. I would talk to her, and she really liked us. When we were kids, she'd say, "Hey, give your auntie a kiss. Give your auntie a kiss," and we'd all shy away. Then she'd pull out her wallet and say, "I'll give you $5," and she got that kiss.
That's funny, man. You have a lot of depth, man. I've never met you before, so I didn't know what to kind of expect. But you got a lot of depth, and that's interesting. Like, kind of hearing those. I've never heard that through any of your interviews or anything. I've never heard any of those stories. It's kind of crazy to see where you came from, kind of, man. It's like an interesting perspective.
My mother was a storyteller, and because we never had radio. Think about it. We never had TV, radio, light, anything. We had a Coleman lamp pumped up, and we had a kitchen stove, a wood stove. That was the heat of the house. But it was so cozy. And the first Christmas I was going to tell you about, oh my God, my mother baked cookies because she learned from the English, and then we did her homemade decorations in the house. And we went out and cut a tree because we lived in Calgary, and there was, we went far enough. We drove far enough till we found a tree. We cut our own Christmas tree. It was a little scraggly thing, I imagine. And we just had the best Christmas you could imagine, especially at my age, and it was so funny because we're driving in the car and Pop says, "Oh, there's where we got your skis." We had these little what do you call those skis? Not downhill skis, but the cross country skis. They were cheap, and they bought us because we lived in the snow. And my dad says, "Here's where we got your presents." And Mom says, "That's where we got some presents, but Santa really brought all the other presents, didn't he?" By that time, we were way beyond the Santa Claus thing. But I had a beautiful childhood, incredible, because it was like Tom Sawyer. We had no money, so in the summertime we never wore clothes or shoes, and we had animals. We had chickens. My dad being Chinese, the habit was, bring a chicken home and kill it and eat it, and they'd bring a chicken home and become a pet or a duck. And next thing you know, we had ducks and chickens, pets.
That's awesome.
And then we got a dog, and I did an interview about racial hate, about Asian hate, and they asked me if I had an encounter, and I had many, but I told them the one when we were living out in the country, like I was telling you, we went to visit a friend. We just moved there, and we made a friend, and he lived a few fields away and down a hill and up a dirt road, kind of thing. And so we went to visit him, my brother and I. And then coming home, it got kind of dark, early. It was around fall, I guess. And we got ambushed by this gang of older kids. because we were Chinese. We were different. And they roughed up my brother, I believe. They didn't touch me, but they pushed my brother around, smacked him around a bit. And so anyway, we made it home, and we told our dad. My dad was there at the time, and my dad took off out of the house like a rabbit, and he could run because when he was a kid, in high school, he was a running back. And so he ran and I guess he got the guys. I don't know. He came back a little while later, but we never got bothered again. They never even looked our way after that one. But we went through it, back in the day, man, especially, in the 40s and the 50s. Oh man, racism was legal. It was the law of the land,
That's gotta be crazy to think about.
and they took it out on they didn't mess with the natives kids because they kind of stuck to themselves. They were like us, only poor. When we had the thing, check it out, for the winter fuel to get through the winter, an Indian would drag a tree, cut down a tree, and in the little sparse areas that we had, cottonwood tree, and he would drag it over to beside our house. And then my dad would give him a few bucks for it. And then we would have to get the saws. At least my brother and my dad would have to cut it up. And my job was piling the wood. And this is life or death shit. This is to get us through the winter.
Yeah, you grew up like my grandfather. My grandfather grew up like that, like farm and stuff, having to do all that shit. Now it's crazy to think about how how old are you now?
I'm 83.
That's crazy how much the world has changed in that time frame. 83 years. That's fucking
incredible.
crazy.
Incredible. Oh, well, look at I'm talking to you on my phone.
Yeah, that is nuts. If I told myself that in the 90s, I wouldn't believe me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I remember when they said, pretty soon you're going to have all your music on your phone. And it was like, yeah, right. Crazy.
No,
I mean, when they got a car phone, I remember I got a car phone. It was, I almost got in an accident because I'm on the car phone, and next thing you know, I'm in a construction area. But yeah, everything is. Well, that's when people say, "Did you ever think weed would be legal?" I said, "Did I ever think I'd be talking to you on my phone?"
Yeah, that's crazy. Like weed's basically legal now. I mean, it's not on a federal level, but most states. I mean, that's crazy. In Canada, I guess, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, we got ways to go, but it's just what do you call it? It's just a matter of the bureaucracy catching up with the reality, of the thing. It's not like we're legalizing it; we're re-legalizing it.
Right. I can't wait to try it once it's legal.
Yeah.
I heard it's great. I heard it's got good qualities.
Yeah, it'll make you hungry, I'll tell you that.
What are your thoughts as a kind of a pop culture icon of I guess marijuana and comedy stuff? What do you think about the medicinal purposes of it? Kind of like
totally. Well, that's what it was always used before. In China, they got 3,000 years ago they were using it, or 5,000 years ago they were using it for cancer. And that you see how the Chinese, back in the day when they had emperors and that, how they got acupuncture and Tai Chi and all that stuff? Do you ever hear about how they did it?
No.
Well, the emperors, they would pay their doctors to keep them healthy. Now, if they got sick, the doctors never got paid. And if they, for some reason, never got well, or they died, the doctors would be murdered. They would be killed.
Wow.
And so the doctors had all the reason in the world to find a way to keep everybody healthy. And so they studied animals and nature and everything else. They studied everything. And then they realized that it's a circulation that kept everything alive. Everything circulated. The water, in order to, if water stays still for too long, it'll go bad. It'll become toxic. and so it's got to keep flowing. And the birds and the animals, when they get too much tension or too much static in their bodies, the birds fluff their feathers, and animals like cats and the big animals, when they needed to, they never went to the gym. They would stretch for their health and to keep the muscles limber, everything, and to keep the circulation. It was all about circulation. And so they come up with Tai Chi, the movement. And then for your health, they come up with they know that the body is controlled by nervous systems. We got a nervous system throughout the body, and they realize it from arrow wounds. When someone got hit with an arrow, and sometimes they noticed that they would study and they write it down, that because he got hit in a certain spot, it affected another spot on his body. And so that's how they learned about acupuncture. And then as far as nature goes, the Chinese herbalists are legendary. You go to any country in the world and you'll find a Chinese herbalist shop. In Vietnam, Cambodia, all those places, because they've had thousands of years to find out what herbs and what combination of this and that. That's why the rhino tusk, were so in need, because it helped men with erectile dysfunction. And so, in order to get a boner, you had to use the rhino thing. And there again, because that was the Chinese emperor's biggest problem, is staying alive and staying healthy enough so they could service all the women that they had, because they had their pick of women, and they could have as many wives as they want. Man, it was a purely a thing, but they would have this problem with their sex life, and so a lot of they had that. I think tiger. They did that with the Bengal tiger. There was some kind of. They were looking for this miracle cure, and if they didn't find it, they'd get executed. So.
That's crazy. Have you been to Asia in general, like Vietnam or China, any of these places?
Yeah, I've been to Vietnam.
Wow.
And Thailand, but not extensively. We went on a sort of like a fixed vacation. But I've been watching travel logs, travel shows, and I want to go to Laos.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and did you hear about Laos?
Well, some things. What do you mean though? What in particular?
Well, it's in the mountains, and they've never been conquered. They're like the Vietnamese. In fact, they're next door.
Yeah. To Southeast Asia.
And their whole economy is kind of based on clothing. The beautiful material they make. They make all these beautiful silks, scarves, and stuff. And the women are really beautiful. My son had a Laotian girlfriend for a while, and she had to get up at 4 a.m. and do all the chores and work in the fields and everything else. And then 8 o'clock, she'd go to school.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I want to go. There's like the food. The Vietnam looks interesting to me in the sense that they had, like all that pho for like 25 cents, like all that fresh food, bro, and like it just seems, and the culture just seems cool. Like one of the guests out on here, Mickey Avalon, he's in Bali right now playing shows. Like it's like the dude that's a cheat code right there. Like figure out something to get paid to do over there. It's like I don't think a podcast would be stopped, but I mean some kind of like thing to make money over there would be interesting. He's like, I wouldn't mind living there for a while. If my fiance wasn't like a school teacher and didn't have to be here 9 months, I'd probably live there for a year or two, But
I wouldn't blame anybody. I was in Bali. My son has a surf camp in Asu, which is off the coast of Sumatra.
That's so cool.
And and his partner has had a surf camp in Bali, and we've been to both places. I haven't been to his camp in Asu, but because it's a little bit too rugged for family. But he's close to Borneo. I want to go to Borneo, man. I want to go to all those places.
Me too, man.
Oh God, Vietnam. I love Vietnam, man. And when we were there, we were in what used to be Saigon.
Yeah.
They have a war memorial there, and the guy that meets you, he's got a stump, and he offers you his stump to shake or touch or whatever. Give a stump bump.
Stop. That's hilarious. No, Vietnam seems the most affordable and interesting to me for some reason. Like I think it's the cheapest and most interesting. Like you can get like a place there for like $200 a month or some shit. Like, and that's decent for some reason.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can do it. And there's a lot of expatriates, but it's communist now. So
Yeah.
you really gotta be on the up and up, and you can't be dealing with drugs. Drugs over there is like a death penalty, So you got to be very careful what you do, And there's traps, of course.
Yeah.
There's a lot of traps for rich Americans, but if you go over like a school teacher, and a hippie, you're fine. You're fine. You just got to mind your own business. And the weird thing about Vietnam, I thought. There was an old lady, homeless, wandering around, man. And because back in the day, like when my dad, he was like his mom and dad were from China. He was born here in Canada, but he went back there and to get married. See, this is in the 20s, or no, yeah, or even the turn of the century. But he was born in Canada. He wasn't going to marry any foreigner. but he was telling me how rugged it was back then, because you were racked by wars and famine and all sorts of things, And when you look at China now, you can never begin to even imagine how poverty stricken they were at one time. And they made it through, Well, we always do. Yeah, we always do.
That's how I feel about Dubai. Like Dubai and China just like fucking became like huge like in my lifetime. Like that like 10 years ago, I mean China wasn't even being talked about. I mean as far as like being a world power, I mean it was being talked about as rich cultural history. But then like and same with like Dubai, it was interesting, but then just like they have like the world's tallest towers in Dubai now, which is crazy. Like to think about. It's like I love seeing the world like fucking do shit like that, I like seeing people win,
Yeah, and that's why when you see the Americans struggling with whether to take vaccines or I mean, you feel like you're living in some not even third world, because even a third world country knows, like how the Chinese would acclimate themselves to a new country. They would take the dirt wherever you're living and put it in a glass and fill it with water and shake it, and then let the dirt settle, and then they would drink it, and that would give your immune system a chance to register with what bacteria was in that particular country, because we never had vaccines back in the day. And we had a lot of plagues and a lot, the plagues hit everybody everywhere, The Bible is full of the plagues they hit because we never had vaccines, or they never had vaccines. But so they have these country ways of doing it, Same as the Jamaicans, they got a lot of country folk medicine, that works. Well, every indigenous country. And that's why they busted the Mexicans for bringing their marijuana across the border, but that was their medicine, that kept them, it was like an antibiotic. But like me, I had cancer, but because I did so much weed in my day and during my trip with the cancer, because it was rectal. It started out prostate, ended up rectal, and then I ended up with an operation. But I'm totally fine now because of the CBD and the THC, and it's medicine. See, it's always been medicine, and what is medicine supposed to do? Make you feel better, right?
Yeah.
And that's what weed does. Weed makes you feel better. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar suffered from extreme, migraine headaches, extreme. And so he would puff on the joint and he would be fine. And I was up in Canada, and in Vancouver, there's a lot of heroin. It's the heroin capital of the world, practically.
Yeah.
And on Hastings Streets, it's all junkies. But at the end of Hastings Street, there's a cannabis cafe. And the junkies, when they're waiting for their fix, they would get their weed from the cannabis cafe. And I've seen them out there, and they're puffing away like they're trying to shoot dope. They're just getting that weed in their system, getting that THC in their system, because it helped them waiting while they wait for their fix. And in some cases, took the place of their fix. And you can't even begin to tabulate or count the many medical uses of cannabis that we still haven't discovered yet, and we're getting there.
That's a great point. I think definitely does a lot of good. And I don't think putting people in cages does any good, So I mean, I was like always working on this joke, like how I trust people to smoke weed more than people to stare at urine. Like, it seems fucking weird. I mean, like the whole thing with like weed being like how they lock people up for years for that shit, man. Like if you're caught like 50 years ago or something, man, like you're fucked out here,
Oh yeah, you got life.
That's fucking crazy to think about.
Well, it's a racist law. It always has been.
I guess the jazz.
Right from the beginning, all the liquor laws. Prohibition was racist against the Italians, the French, and the Puritans. The English started the racism. That's when they started. When they conquered the rest of the world, like Africa and India. They're so racist, but they brought their culture there, true enough, and the language and a lot of their things. But racism, and you can see with Harry and Meghan, that's why they had to leave, because they did not want any brown people in the royal family.
The British are super racist. The British are the most racist, probably.
Yeah. Which ones?
The British, man. The British. Yeah, they have like different strands of white you could be even. They're fucking crazy.
Yeah.
They're fucking, they hate me. I got red hair, man. They fucking hate me, like.
Yeah. The Scotch, Irish. Yeah. And that's what we're suffering. That's what we're coming out of.
Yeah, I think so
coming
too.
Out of that mirror. Well, when you look at Trump and what he tried to do, although, people, especially the sane ones, they talk shit about Trump, but I was asked one time, what did Trump contribute to? And I said, you got to think about it, man. If it wasn't for Trump, we would not have Joe Biden as president, and Joe Biden is doing the job that he's been trying to do his whole life. And think about it. He was vice president for 8 years. He knows the routine. He knows what is needed in America. And we got to thank Trump for it, because it wasn't for Trump. Biden tried 2-3 times to become president. He couldn't even get out of the primaries. He couldn't even get out of the beginning thing, because he's got as much charisma as the guy that delivers my groceries. Not a lot, but he knows how to delegate responsibility. That's a good leader. See, when you got a leader that is sane and is not trying to, line his pockets. And the truth with Trump, man, he could have had everything, because there's no money greater than infrastructure money. Like look at Bezos and the Amazon, but and Jeff, there's another guy, Jeff, I forget his name, but he owns all these apartment buildings. It's all about construction, because what construction really is art. Yeah. And I've always maintained, well, I think from the beginning of time, it's been art that became expensive and that saved many civilizations. That's why they built those churches the way they did, and that's a throwback from the pyramids. See, pyramids are pure art.
I agree.
And what they are, they're not only art, but they're jobs for thousands, if not millions, of people that make a living off people piling rocks on top of one another. And it's rock. It's employment, and then they have to be fed. So it's you got an economy, and you're not killing people, so you don't have to. It's not destructive. Yeah, that's what my aim now, because Cheech and I, basically we're finished as far as movies go. We got a documentary coming out, and we're just finishing it up. And I had a little moment where I was going to, I had a flashback, because we're getting close to the end, and I felt, I did. It's just my instincts, I thought, oh, I know what the movie needs, and I've always thought that way, when we did any kind of Cheech and Chong project. And so I came up with this ending, and it was rejected out of hand by everybody, Cheech and the documentary filmmaker. And we went through a little drama, but I really had to come to grips with the fact that it's over. And so now I'm embarking on a new career. It's a new thing in show business that I have never attempted before. And I am a poet. And now I'm going to come out of the poet closet, and that's what you're going to be seeing me from now on, is reading my poetry with the jazz band behind me.
That's awesome.
Doesn't it sound great?
No, it sounds fucking cool, dude. Honestly, I love poetry too. And I like the beatnik generation type thing. They kind of did the jazz. I like that. I'm a big poetry fan, honestly, and writing fan. That's actually really cool. And I think once you do one kind of art, you could probably do a million different kinds of art. You've been like music, comedy, movies. I mean, fucking like so. I mean, you can reinvent yourself constantly in this world. I mean, I think that's what America's cool. That's why it's cool. It's like, as far as an artist, you can do anything you want.
Yeah, and I love my notoriety. I love that. And now I'm gonna do poetry for my live performances. I've got a few paintings that I'm doing, and I'm not going to sell anything while I'm alive, and then my heirs are going to really reap the rewards, because I got $1 million bong being made.
Holy fuck!
And I'm really in a good space, because
it seems like
everything I do now, it just, I just love my life now, man. I got a plan. I've been looking at the King Tut program about his tomb, and it's very interesting, because it wasn't his tomb; it was his sister's, and that's why they got some really feminine looking mummies, or coffins.
Yeah, I remember that. That's funny.
Because it was his sister, and they just kind of leaped over her thing and rubbed out her name and put King Tut. Don't waste a good funeral here. And so I thought, oh, perfect. I'm going to build my tomb while I'm alive. And then when I pass, then it'll be a big tourist attraction. All the stoners will come and pay homage to the tomb of Tommy Chong.
This podcast is sponsored by Avere Fiducia. Avere Fiducia has one goal and one goal only. That is to help you dress confidently. With affordable prices and great styles, it's hard not to love them. Head over to averefiducia.com or click the link below to start dressing confidently.